Welcome back to the show, Danny. How you doing today?
Oh, great, Greg. Thanks for having me on.
Dude, how's the weather down in San Antonio now? It's
It's
getting
already hot. It's
Is
already
it?
freaking hot. Well, I mean, the mornings have been pretty nice, but then it goes from like 50 to 90 something, 95, 96 already.
Man, that's crazy. What does it ever snow down there, or is it too south to snow?
Yeah, we had Snowmageddon last winter, not this winter, but the winter before that. We actually had a lot of snow. We had a freeze that lasted for like 3 or 4 days. So like a lot of the palm trees around here, people having to cut them down because they died. Yeah.
That's crazy, man. Yeah, Texas, it's like one day it'll be like, 100, and then the next day in like January it could be like 40. It's a very weird weather, at least in Dallas. I've been to Dallas a lot of times. It's like one day it's hot and one day it's cold, and very strange place weather-wise. But anyway, we're not the weathermen here. So if people were not familiar with you, you've been on the show before. If you could just give everyone a little 30,000-foot view on who you are, what you do. You got a couple companies, and then we'll dive into the main topic of today's show.
For sure. So, real estate investing since 2003. I went from a background in software development and got into real estate investing because my father was doing it, and he was seeing the freedom that he had to drive around all day and make offers, and just the excitement from that, the adventure of it brought me into it. And, here we are 20 years later almost. And, I guess it's been 19 years. And I'm still actively doing deals, but I don't have goals for the number of deals I'm doing. And I don't have the business set up anymore to operate on doing a bunch of deals, because I, over the last 3 years, have switched over to focusing mostly on software. So we have Forefront CRM, which is a CRM system for real estate investors. And that's really my passion these days with that.
Awesome. So quick question on, so your dad got into the business before you got into the business. Was he doing like direct to seller marketing, or was he like going on the MLS? Because I'm sure this was obviously like 15 years ago now.
Yeah, it was about 20 years ago when he got into it. So we had a big flood down here, and he works in the smaller towns around San Antonio, not in San Antonio itself. And so some of the rivers out there flooded, and there was a lot of flood houses. So he started buying flood houses. And so he was doing that, and had some relationships with REO agents, was getting some things from that, but the majority of it was directly from sellers. So the interesting thing is, whenever I started, I was looking at MLS properties, and I was like, I need to find my first deal. And I remember being so frustrated and telling him, why is it so easy for you to buy all these houses left and right, and I can't even find one deal? And they told me, well, target, start sending mail and stuff, start, trying to find these sellers that want to sell. And everything completely changed. And since then, that's been the whole focus. It's just directly to seller. We did buy some stuff from MLS, but like the effort involved and then the margins and stuff, it's just so much easier to buy directly.
Yeah, you're just not in control of your deal flow with that. It's because you're at the mercy of either an REO agent, or it's very tough to scale. If you go to auctions, I have good friends who used to do that, and they just totally went direct to seller. So it's under your control for the most part. So
yeah,
got the CRM business, you got, you're still doing deals in San Antonio. I mean, I don't know the market too well, but I do know that, Texas in general seems like, everyone's moving there nowadays from where I am in California. So do you see that like coming into San Antonio, or is that more up in Austin where there's people just flocking to Texas?
Yeah, no, we see it. The values have been going up. And I think Austin, Dallas, and Houston typically will see a much greater, influx and increases in price and thing than we see in San Antonio. But yeah, we see it and experience it. And, it's great because you're riding some of that appreciation. I still don't buy with appreciation in mind.
Yeah.
I'm still buying with, like, if things changed right now, I'm still good. Like if it doesn't go anywhere higher, I'm still going to be good. So.
Yeah. We had a seller tell our team today, he's like, well, if you pay me 500 today, based on my calculations, it'll be worth 700 in 2 years. And Brett was like, well, I get that, but we have no idea if that could probably happen, but like, we don't make offers.
That calculation might not be valid too.
No, exactly. What if anyway, so we were speaking offline before we hit record here, and you actually made a really good point. We just did a show together on your podcast, And you were making a great point on the whole seller's journey, right? On the seller's psychology, their journey through the selling process, or as we would call it, the buying process if we're in
Right.
sales. So I want to spend today covering that because I know you have some real great insights on that, and you're also doing a workshop, which we'll talk about at the end of today's show.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I love this because it's something that during the time that we figured this stuff out, we didn't know what it was like in the business. We didn't specifically see this, but I'm seeing this now looking back at what's happened in my business over time. And it really kind of started with I wrote a book called Flipping Houses Exposed.
I've read it.
Years ago. And
good book.
Okay, good. I was waiting.
I was
like,
it's on my Kindle.
Good or
bad.
It's
on my Kindle. For real, it's on my Kindle. I've read that book. This is back when I got started. Yeah.
Cool. And so I wrote that book, and the whole thing about the book, I'll keep it really short, was 34 weeks. I documented everything in the business, all the marketing I did, all the leads that came in, why the people were selling, whether I went to make an offer or not, and whatever happened. So 495 qualified leads. This is where people were saying, make me an offer. I'd like to get an offer for my house.
Yeah.
Of those 495, I bought 11, which is not horrible, but it's pretty bad, right? During the time, I didn't really think much of it. I didn't calculate that out. I was just like, I know we need to do this many deals, so we just need to keep cranking and getting more leads. And what's happened more recently is I saw a statistic on sales and how 3% of people are active buyers where they're ready to buy something. They're going to do it. They see it. They're excited. They move. They make a decision. They buy it.
Yeah.
Right. And then the stat below that, it's kind of like a pyramid, right? Of complete buyers where the top is 3%. And so I attribute that to being like the sellers, like in our case, right? We're working with sellers. So 3% of sellers are ready to sell whenever you do marketing or whatever, and they reach out to you. And the funny thing was, when you do the calculation of the 495 leads and 11 deals, that's 2.2%, right? And after a little bit of time, I may have got a couple more of those. So somewhere in there between 2.2 and 3%. So and you can tell from reading the book that I was like, next. I was just like, I'll make an offer, you take it, you don't, whatever, I'm moving on to the next one. I'm just going to keep generating more leads. And so with this sales stat, though, underneath it, it said 7% intend to change. Would be they intend to sell, right?
Yeah.
And so, but they're not active. They're not the 3% that will sign up right away or the day after or maybe 2 days later, but they're going to sell to somebody probably pretty soon.
Yeah.
And so I was like, dude, what if, that was happening even back then, and 7% I wasn't tapping into. And then below that, there's 30% more that have a need but are not ready to act yet. So they have the need, and they don't have the intention to sell yet, but they have the need, so they could be getting to the point where they do eventually have the intention to sell and then actually do sell. And so if you look at that, that's 40%, right? And I think a 40% conversion rate on motivated seller leads that coming in is pretty difficult to get. That's probably not likely. Yeah. But I think that the 10% up to the 20% is completely doable. And in fact, that's what we ended up doing over the years. And that's why I'm saying we didn't know about it at the time. The changes that we made were related to this. But now looking back, I'm saying, okay, this is what this was all about, because we moved into really, getting like a lead intake person, right, to take calls. Somebody that's super personable. That was their job. They got on the phone. They weren't in a hurry to get off to do the other marketing tasks they had or do whatever they had to do, like I was when I was wearing all the hats. They could just get on the phone and be friendly and talk and just talk and build that rapport. And then we put them through sales training through John Martinez, and did the same thing with acquisitions person. And that person had only so many appointments that he would book during the week because he wanted to be able to be there for 2 hours and sit on the couch with the seller if he needed to, right? And it just went a long way in building the rapport, getting that trust and everything. And then the systems that we created around, working with them to be there for when they did transition. And so we did get to the point where we were getting about 1 out of every 5 leads, 1 out of every 7 leads becoming a deal, which is 20%.
That is phenomenal. Those are, that's amazing, the conversion.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's what we ended up getting to. And so now that I've been looking back at this and really studying and digging into what was it about how we did that approach that did that? What were all the factors? What were the things that caused that? And looking at it from the perspective of the seller themselves, right? Because that first when I was doing, writing the book and we had the horrible conversion rate, 495 leads and 11 deals. That was all about me saying I need to get this many deals, which means I need to keep doing all these leads, get more leads because I need to get that many deals. And it was all about what I needed, what I wanted, and trying to do. And it wasn't at all looking at the fact that I was working with people, I was working with motivated sellers, and each of them are different, right? There's some similarities between some, and you can kind of group them that way. But for the most part, we're serving them, we're serving motivated sellers. And, when you look at how our business changed, where we increased our conversion rate and got way more deals, it was because we were treating them as people and not trying to get that sale right away and then forgetting about it if we didn't, right? It was all a buildup. And we knew that
Yeah.
we could compound all of our work because we didn't just say adios, right? And my girlfriend said something the other day that struck me. She got an estimate to do some work on her historic home. And well, she didn't get the estimates. The contractor came and looked at it and was supposed to get her one. And she's like, he's not reached back out to me. And, I feel like, why am I having to contact him?
All right.
And it's like, I think, we were doing that back in the past too. We would make an offer, they didn't take it. And maybe we call them the next day and ask something. But for the most part, it's like, okay, well, they're not motivated enough. And it's like, I wonder how many of those sellers were like, well, they never contacted me again. Like I especially if the situations change, right? They intended to change the 7% that would intend to change. And then the intention's there, or something happens in their life and they're but then nobody's talking to them anymore.
There's
Right.
so much money left on the table. Yeah.
Yeah. So what if you were the person that was still talking to them, even if it was 6 months later, and not in a way that was a pushy, but just in a curious way, like, how's everything going? Like what's going on with the house, and just being there and not trying to push the matter. So I got real curious about all of this stuff. And some of this plays into, I had a conversation with Gary Boomershine, great guy. I had
Awesome
him on the
guy.
podcast.
Gary
Yeah.
B, man. He's the man.
Yeah, I had him on the Flipping Junkie podcast, and he started, he was talking about different typical conversion rates for different channels.
Yeah.
Right, because we can look at, well, my conversion rate was 3%, but where were those leads coming from? Because there is a difference, right? And I think he was saying radio and TV is like 40 to 60 leads per deal, right? Cold calling, well, I'm not sure what he was saying about cold calling stuff, but direct mail, 20 to 40 leads per deal. Average that out to 30. So maybe 30 leads per deal. PPC, maybe looking at like 15 leads per deal, 10 to 15, something like that. And then organic SEO kind of stuff, which is what we used to focus on. That was like our whole thing. We're looking at maybe 10% or not. I'm sorry, not 10%, but yeah. So it'd be 1 out of 10. So 10 leads per deal. So about 10%. And why is that? Like, why are they different? Why is it that there's such a diversity in the leads coming in and having those standard? Because you're taking out the different parts of what our differences in our businesses and our approaches to getting those deals, right? Yeah. When you take those out and you standardize it and say those things, why is there such a variance in those different channels?
I think it would probably be because when you're like, for example, if you're going on to Google, for example, and you're bypassing the ads and you're still clicking on, I want to sell my house tomorrow, and you have some sort of savviness where you want to deal with a credible local person, they're really in a situation where they're close on that buying cycle, versus if you are on your way to work and you're listening to Jimmy Buffett and all of a sudden Danny's going to buy your house. You might want to sell your house. It might be on your to-do list for the next 6 months, but now you're aware that Danny's going to buy your house, and then you might want to sell your house. But I think, and then with direct mail, it's the same thing. Like, if you didn't want to sell your house, you would have thrown the postcard out. But when you get the postcard and you're thinking about selling, your tenant hasn't paid rent, you're a little bit more like motivated at that point. That's my guess. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
No, you're exactly right. I mean, I
Yeah.
think you hit the nail on the head. And
Yeah.
if you look at this from the same perspective of the way marketing is in general, right? Because we're all marketers as business owners. I mean, that's the bulk of what we do is really about marketing and sales to maybe a lesser extent, but it's all tied together. But in marketing, there's this idea of the buyer journey.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why I said earlier, motivated seller journey. It's because each of these sellers is going on their own individual journey. And it's got all kinds of different things happening in their life and different things that's very unique to them. Right. And we can talk to them about that all that we want, but we can get to know them. They can get to trust us and all that kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is, the motivated seller journey, if you model it like a buyer journey in marketing, is awareness, and then consideration, and then decision. And so the awareness stage is when they're receiving that marketing, right? So maybe they didn't know, maybe they have a problem, but they weren't so aware of the pain of the problem wasn't big enough for them to start doing anything to consider options for solutions.
Yeah.
So they're becoming aware that they do, like you said, listening to that ad and saying, I do have that property,
Yeah.
and it's like, it's the awareness all of a sudden. So now they're entering this journey, this motivated seller journey, and you might even call it just seller journey, but we don't typically buy from just sellers. I mean, there's some.
Yeah, they're usually they got something going on. Usually,
right.
It's never that straightforward.
Right, because otherwise they wouldn't have the problem to start considering.
On the MLS, yeah.
And so, understanding that the seller's potential reasons for wanting to sell, right? What at that stage they have a reason to maybe want to sell, but haven't considered what the solution might be, and I think the things that we can ask ourselves right now, if we're considering people, the sellers, the motivated sellers that would be in that stage, would be things like, what reasons would they want to sell, and how would they put those reasons into their own words, right? What would they experience if they don't sell?
I love that question.
Why can't they do it themselves? Why can't they sell it themselves? Like, why can't they take care of it or do whatever it is that they might need to do with that house? It could be just put a tenant in there, right? Like, why can't they just solve it by doing something themselves? And then show them how you can help them and what their situation would look like if you did help them, right? Like taking it to basically what's if you provide the solution, what does their life look like at that point?
Be like a future pace. Like, hey, let's pretend this house is closed, the money's in your account, and you're on your way up to Tennessee. What's your life look like at that point? And then they can kind of be like, oh my God, if I don't have to deal with this property with the code violations, like, and then they're like, you're kind of creating that gap to where like they know they want to be there and they know they're here, and then the solution lies in the middle where you're purchasing their property and solving their problem.
And it's like what you had said in the interview that we had before, in our talk before this. You had said it's always about getting to the truth, right? Revealing the truth. And you're talking to sellers, and that's what the questions that you guys ask and the things that you do. And so I think this is kind of aligns with that, right? And but the bigger thing is thinking from the perspective, having that mindset shift about how we need to be aware of this. Our lead intake needs to be aware of this. Our acquisitions people need to be aware of this. Ask these type of questions because they could just be in that very initial stage, right?
Yeah.
And we have to meet them there if they are.
I love that. And communicate to them where they are, not where you want them to be, which would be signing on the dotted line.
Right. Right. And we'll get over to that, because if they move from awareness into consideration, then, right. So if you tell the story, you have them consider these things, then they might possibly move right away into consideration. But that's typically a stage where they'll call you or find you and you're talking to them. Usually it's where they're in the consideration stage. So at this point, you need to ensure that you're going to be the obvious choice to solve their problem. So they're looking for solutions and comparing those. And so this is where, as I looked into it, what were the things that we did for the people at the point where they weren't ready to sign something yet? They needed to move there still. What were the things that we did that that made sure that we were there for them, meeting them at that spot. And it was a big one. And a lot of investors miss this big time. And I know you talked about this when we just talked about it. So I know you got it nailed, but it's show them how it works. What is the process? What is it is going to happen? A lot of these people have never sold a house before. Right. And so you're asking them to make a decision and they have no idea what in the world's going to happen.
Totally. That's so true, man. Because we're jaded because we do this every day. I do this every day. So when I buy a house and I eat dinner at night, it was another day in the office. When a seller gets a contract signed with an off-market buyer who they don't know from a hole in the wall, they're a little nervous. What did I just do? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's as simple as finding ways to make sure that they understand what happens.
Totally.
Right? What is it that you do? What is, like, you know, it's as simple as we'll come over, look at the house. You know, this is not a formal inspection. I'm simply looking around, seeing the potential of the house, what it can be, what's going to require to get it in sellable condition. I'll make you an offer. You don't have to accept that offer. There's no obligation. There's no cost to you. If you do accept the offer, here's what's going to happen. And then it's just like, make it clear, make it, you know, and then answer any questions and then show them the benefits of working with you. Right. Like, again, like reiterating the what's going to happen, what's going to change in their life if they do work with you. If you have things like, you know, a close rate of 100% where everything you've ever put under contract you closed on, that's a big deal.
Huge,
right?
especially nowadays.
Yeah. And if you have that or something similar, right, not only does letting them know that in the right context, not in a way that's like, hey, take my offer because of this, but just in the buildup of the consideration, they, you know, they might be thinking then if you do have competition, I wonder what their close rate is, right? Or, you know, you just introduced this whole thing of thinking, but so show them the likelihood of success if they go with you, right? So if you have that, it's great to play that up. Show them proof of what you're saying is true, right? I hope that everybody's got testimonials or reviews. If not, you need to start gathering those. I don't care if they're online or on a piece of paper, but you got to have those because, you know, people want to see that these days. They want to know, especially if they research you online, they got to see them. But even like at a meeting or something, or an email after you've set an appointment, right? How big is that to send them an email after you set the appointment, before you go to the appointment, with a lot of this stuff kind of reiterated? Here's the process. You got a testimonial just sitting in there. You don't play it up. Look at our testimonial. Look how great it's just there. Right.
Yeah.
And then maybe a link to other ones that you have. And then people can end up in a whole rabbit hole looking at all that stuff and reading that and building up this big, you know, belief about who you are and how you operate because they're seeing all of it, right? They're seeing, you know, what you're wanting them to see instead of them making assumptions about you.
That's so, I'll tell you what, Danny, I want to just reiterate that because we get leads all the time from sellers who, whether they got mail from us or they went to our site and they said, I read your reviews. We know there's a lot of buyers in your market. We like the reviews that we saw, and we want to give you the opportunity to buy this house because of the social proof. I could tell you I'm the best buyer in the world, but if Sally, who sold me her house, said Greg did what he said he's going to do, she's going to believe Sally over me because Sally has no incentive anymore to, you know what I mean? So it's don't, for the listeners, never underestimate the power of the third party testimonial. And here's one more thing I want to mention. I know I don't want to cut you off too bad, but this is so important for new investors. If you've never done a deal before, I learned this from my friend Todd Toback. It doesn't matter. You can still get reviews. You can get character reviews, or if you are going to partner with another investor, you can leverage their reviews, right? So there's always a way to get reviews, even if you're brand new.
Right. Yeah. Character reviews are huge. I mean, friends, family, whoever can speak to your character and say, this guy's a stand-up guy. He always does what he says he's going to do. Simple as that. Doesn't need to be super wordy, you know, short ones that like hit straight to the point, you know, are just much easier to consume and stuff, and believable, right?
Yeah.
You see some of those Amazon reviews, right? And you're like, who's paying for these? Because these are horrible. Like, they're,
oh my gosh. I go buy the competitor's products at that point. I'm like, I'm buying the other vacuum, you know, screw that. Yeah. It's funny. It's powerful though.
So the sellers move from awareness, you know, they all go through all of these phases. The really motivated people that are active, the 3% that'll sell right away, they move through it pretty quickly, and maybe they've already done it before they talk to you. But so awareness, then consideration, and then the decision phase where they're finally at a stage when they're pretty much ready to pull the trigger. They're ready to make a move and take care of the problem, do something about it, and sell the house to somebody. And that's where you make it easy for them to proceed, right? You have to make it very easy for them. And I think this is the point where under promising and over delivering, it's like, if you have to do the things like somebody can't get to, and I think a lot of investors do this anyway, if somebody can't get a ride to the closing or to meet with you to get the contract, like you're going to go out of your way to find a way to meet them and do all that kind of stuff. But, and then having like a simple contract instead of some crazy thing, if you can, wherever you are, right? Like having all that stuff be super simple. Not telling them I can only meet you this day and time a week from now. Like that's ridiculous. Just like all that kind of stuff. So making that decision part of it very simple. And hopefully if you've done the other things, right, it's a very easy step, right? You're now moved the 7% that intend to change into the decision phase, into the 3%. Like you've grabbed now up to 10% of conversion stuff. And then, if you work at getting more of the ones that have the need, and that one's all of this stuff, but then over time, right? So adding the follow-up, adding the stuff for when their circumstances change enough to where they're like, you know what, I thought I'd be able to do this other thing. I thought Uncle Larry was going to buy it, but after 4 months, he's not done anything and it's not worked. So I'm going to go ahead and sell it. And then who are they going to sell to, right? It's the person that talked to them more.
Can I add a story on that to your point home from my own personal experience with this? All right. So One Kit Court, Monroe, New York happens to be my hometown, about 2 minutes from where I grew up. So it's pretty ironic. Guy called, it was actually this is a crazy story. My acquisitions manager lived across the street from him. He moved to Delaware since then. But he goes, Greg, my neighbor's house is vacant and somebody inherited this property. You should give him a call. Get the guy on the phone. Had a problem he knew he had to solve, but he was not playing ball right away. Totally cool. I said, no problem, John. If there's anything I can do to help you, let me know. And I'll touch base with you every now and then just to see how you're doing. Not to get you to sell me your house, but to see how you're doing. Because I'm a human, you're a human. That's how we communicate. Long story short, about 5 months later, his problem got a lot worse. And he says, Greg, and by the way, I made him an offer. He knew my offer. He says, Greg, I got to sell this house ASAP. You're a straight up guy. You followed up with me. I'm going to sell you my house. And that ended up being a home run deal. And it was simply from his journey because he wasn't playing ball right away. He didn't want to sell right away, especially at that price. But because of the follow up and the awareness of where he was in that scenario, turned out to be a really good deal, right? And he got his problem solved.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And that just, when you look at those numbers though, I mean, even if they're not exact and fit everybody's situation and every market and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter. What matters is the fact that there is the bulk of people that are not the 3%. We're looking at 37%. So even if that number is off, even if it's 20%, 20 versus 3, you have to understand that, like, if you're not doing these things, you're missing all of that.
Totally.
You're just missing. And that's what we did for years. And so it's just like looking back and saying, man, we made these changes and we did these things. It's very cool, but why did it all work? What was the shift behind it? And it's just that perspective. And I think with follow-up, you have to ask, like, why do people still, even if everybody says it, right? The fortune's in the follow-up. Like, everybody knows it. Everybody can say, yeah, I get it. And then stop paying attention to you. But we asked, our customers, because we do Q&A calls every 2 weeks with people that are a part of Forefront CRM. And we were saying, like, who on this call is using the automated follow-up? And it was like half of them. And the other half weren't. And I didn't have to say anything. And the half that were getting on to the half that weren't, saying, what the hell are you guys doing? And it was the opportunity to ask them, why are you not doing it? Like, what's the belief? Because the action's not there. So what's the belief causing you to not do this? I don't want to be salesy or pushy, or my team doesn't want to be salesy or pushy. It's like, okay, well, that's a belief about how you're appearing to these other people, but it's an assumption and it's incorrect because, like, you've not done it. So you don't know when somebody tells you were the one that followed up. So we're going to sell to you. You stayed in touch with me. No one else did. And so I want to sell to you. You're professional. You hear that all the time. You're so professional. And especially when your messages have things that are relevant to them or specific to them, even if you are doing it automated, but that it has a house address or has their first name in it, and it's sent from in the morning and it says good morning. And it's just like, hey, just checking in with you, seeing if everything's all right, if everything's going well with the house or whatever. And just stuff like that. It's just like, that's all you need. You don't have to, and I don't know. I think some people maybe also hear this whole thing about 7 touches to get the sale or something.
Yeah.
And it's like a numbers thing where you got to communicate with them this many times and you'll get the sale. It has nothing to do with that, in my opinion. I mean, I think it's being top of mind because you did follow up with them, but it's just being there until their journey gets to the point where they're at decision, right? Where their life and events that happen get them to where they voluntarily get to decision point.
100%. You said that so well. And that's how you convert the marketing that people spend a lot of time and money on. It's like a lot of new investors and even experienced investors, quite frankly, they think they're going to spend money on marketing today and get paid tomorrow. And at least in my market in New York, where it's like impossible to do a deal fast, you gotta be willing to wait and communicate with people. And at the end of the day, I always say, your income is directly in proportion to your ability to solve problems, period, no matter what business you're in. So if you approach, you made a great point earlier in the podcast, we're in the business of serving sellers. We're not in the business of making money. That's a byproduct of serving customers, adding value. And when you can flip the script and serve customers, communicate with them where they are in the journey, not where you want them to be, which is in the escrow office, and you can have a real conversation with them, you're going to make more money inevitably. And you're also going to have happier sellers. And you're also going to get referrals from sellers who are happy that you bought their house. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I thought of, because if you don't approach it that way, and you're right, it takes a lot of the pressure off, right? Because you're not hard selling thinking you got to get this or else. Like, what are you going to do if you don't get this deal? You're going to get a lot more when you don't have that pressure on yourself. And you're not going to, they say sales breath, right? You're not going to have sales breath. You're not going to reek of sales breath. Like your motive is not aligned with what their motive is. And it's like, people can sense that and they don't like it. And I think you end up with a lot more deals whenever you treat it as, we're here to help, explain it all, make it very clear to you, but I'm not going to pressure you to sell me your house.
I love that. And it takes the guard off, because I'll give you an example. If someone's trying to sell me something, I'm generally an easy buyer if I have something I need to buy. But if someone is like pushy to me or they just do something that I don't like I'm going to buy from their competitor. So it's like, it goes both ways. Like when the home buyers or the investors are trying to get sold on something, the person who communicates the best will ultimately win that sale. And they got to think about that. Is exactly what's going on when they're on the other side of the table, or ideally on the same side of the table if you're selling the right way.
Right.
But it's human psychology. And I like how you brought the stats up on the show today, because that's the reality of this business, especially when you're in a business where 95% of the overall seller marketplace is going to list their house on the MLS. So now we're talking about the 5%, which is a lot in big cities, who are going to be selling their property off market to a home buyer. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's still a huge pool, but the majority of people, 95%, are going to go retail on the MLS. And those people are automatically going to disqualify themselves. So now you're almost whittling down to that 5% that you can truly serve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then you break down the 5% into the 3%. And then, what I was talking about, and that number gets pretty small, but not so small, because what we talked about was, 20% is attainable. I mean, it absolutely is. The first 10% is a lot easier, but the 20%, the next 10% is also there and available if you tweak things in your business. And that's what the whole workshop that I put on, because the steps to take to do those things, like from consideration to decision over time, like that's what I'm doing a whole workshop on, just because there's so much in it.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff in there. I'm sure about that. Anything else regarding the seller's journey that we can add to today's show if we haven't already added it? This is really good stuff. I have a really good feeling this is going to be a popular episode, because this relates to every investor, whether they're new or experienced, whether they're doing 1 deal a month or they're doing 100 deals a month. This is relevant to them and their teams.
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, because it's the thing that doesn't require more spend, more effort. Like it's really just changing the way you're doing things and approaching things to get the more deals, right? Get more deals from what you've already got coming in. But I think that the perspective, the mindset shift of looking at it from that is just, I just want to reiterate that, because that's the thing that I don't hear being talked about, like that journey and then focusing on that, right? Because I guess we have to put this in a different way than just saying follow up. The fortunes in the follow up. And maybe that's where this is like more of a data, data driven, but also kind of showing you the reason behind why it works, why the fortune is in it, because that'll then help you do it properly so that you actually do get the results from it.
100%. It'll help them take better action when they understand exactly why that statement is a fact. Because it's cool to say on a meme or on a tweet, right? Or on an Instagram reel, which I just started getting into recently. By the way, those are powerful.
Yeah.
The algorithm is different. But anyway, when you know that the fortune's in the follow-up, and then you can work Danny's system, it's going to make you a better home buyer. It's going to make you a better business person. You're ultimately going to solve more problems and inevitably grow your business, grow your wealth. So Danny, if people want to check out this workshop, what is the best way for them to register? And then I also want to make sure that they're aware of Forefront CRM if they're interested in that as well.
Yeah, sure. So you can go to forefrontcrm.com. So it's FOREFRONT forefrontcrm.com/workshop, WORKSHOP. So forefrontcrm.com/workshop. And that's where you can go to register. It's a free event. It's just a live workshop. I mean, an online workshop. So it's free to attend. You don't have to pay for it. Just register for it, get your spot for it, and then enjoy it.
Awesome. So forefront.com/workshop. We'll make sure that's in the notes. And then if people want to check out the CRM, the best way is forefrontcrm.com, right? That'll take you to the
Absolutely. Yeah. Or at youtube.com/forefrontcrm.
Awesome. And what about yourself? If they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, the best way would be my email address. So Danny@flippingjunkie.com, which is also the name on my podcast, but Danny@flippingjunkie.com.
I love that name, the Flipping Junkie.
I was going to change it. I was going to change it recently.
Why? That's a great name, bro.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking, getting more focused on advanced topics.
Yeah.
In real estate investing. And so the flipping part, like it's just like a lot of people wholesaling, they don't see it the same as flipping. Anyway, but I decided against it. I'm going to keep it because it's memorable and it's already, somewhat, it's got a little bit of a brand awareness around it.
For sure. Well, I'll tell you what, I read your book before I ever met you back in like 2017. I remember I was over Christmas break. I'm reading the book on the Kindle. I'm like, oh, this guy, I heard you on Bigger Pockets, and then I read your book. So when we eventually connected, I feel like, well, we had mutual friends anyway, but I already kind of knew a lot about you. So it's always fun to have you on the show. We'll make sure we have all these in the show notes. Danny, this was a very valuable topic. I really appreciate you hopping on today to cover it in depth. If they want to check out the workshop, forefront.com, Forefront
CRM. Yeah,
forefrontcrm.com/workshop. Danny, it's always a pleasure chatting with you, brother, and I'll catch you soon.
All right, take care.